Hello, 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 everyone. Welcome to another episode of Sree's daily global COVID-19 show. My name is Sree Sreenivasan, and it's my honor to convene this daily conversation around all things COVID. On the show, we cover three crises: the health, financial, and racial inequality crises. We're always looking for guests and theme suggestions. Please email me, sree@sree.net. We're grateful to our partners at Scroll.in, one of India's leading news, culture, and information websites with a global footprint. They are hosting us right now on their channels. We're live on Facebook, on Twitter, on YouTube, and on LinkedIn. Please tag and share this with your friends and family. We have a special show for you tonight. We're talking about how you create change under COVID. You're about to meet Briones Bedell. She's a California teenager who got Trader Joe's to change the names of products with racist names, such as, get ready for this, Trader Jose's, Trader Ming's, Trader Arabian Joe, Trader Giotto, Trader Joe-san. These are all names of actual products that you may have seen and enjoyed at Trader Joe's, but she started a petition and changed the world. She'll be with us in a couple of minutes. Hi, everybody. I'm Sree, and I'm delighted to have you all with us tonight. I'm the Marshall Loeb Visiting Professor of Digital Innovation at Stony Brook School of Journalism, and I'm the co-founder of Digimentors, a social, digital, and virtual events consulting company. If you have a virtual event that you are putting together, call us. Our motto: don't cancel or postpone your in real life event without talking to me. My email address is right there, sree@sree.net. Please get in touch if you have any questions. I'm trying to understand the world of virtual events. We have done more than several dozen each month through this COVID crisis. Thank you all for being here. We're live right now on Facebook, on Twitter, on YouTube, and on LinkedIn. And we want you to tag your friends, share this with your friends. And if you're on YouTube right now, please hit subscribe. One of the things I did on my summer vacation, not really vacation, just COVID-imposed quarantine, is work on my YouTube. Our YouTube channel is youtube.com/Sreenet. I'm trying to learn how to get better at it. I have so much more respect for all the millennials and Gen Z folks who figured out how to use YouTube as a creator. I'm a great consumer of YouTube, but I'm learning how to create on it. So much potential and so much work. Please connect with me on YouTube at Sreenet. We also have a newsletter. I hope you're a subscriber. YouTube, you can find it at sreenet.substack.com. It's right there on the screen, sreenet.substack.com. We want to start by thanking our producers who make it possible for us to do this show. And we want to thank our producers, Vandana Menon, Vandana_Menon on Twitter, and Rose Horowitz, Rose Horowitz 31. Please follow them and check out our shows. We've had 132 shows, 200 in the first 125. We had 234 guests from 48 cities and 13 countries. 143 of them were women. We've had doctors, nurses, authors, journalists, CEOs, founders, teachers, and professors. And you can find them all in our archives. Where are you watching from? Tell us. We'd love to know, and we'd love for you to say hello to our young activist who's here with us today. We also want to thank our sponsors who make it possible for us to be here by sponsoring our show. And we want to thank Muckrack Academy for Fundamentals of Social Media. There's a free certification program that they helped me put together, me and my colleagues, Linda Bernstein, Shrusti Hebar, and Stefan Kaplan, along with Mike Schneider of Muckrack Academy. mrac.co/social, mrac.co/social. More than 4,000 people have signed up for this free course. Please sign up and join us as well. And finally, before we go to our guest, we want to play an ad for a new show that I'm co-executive producing with two of my friends. It's called She's on Call.
Hi, I'm Dr. Sujana Chandrasekhar. I'm an ear, nose, and throat surgeon in New York City and New Jersey. And I'm Dr. Marina Kurian. I'm a general surgeon in New York City area.
We'd like to introduce you to our new show, She's on Call. We air live on social media platforms from 11 a.m. to noon every Sunday Eastern Time. We discuss the medical topics of the week.
We have two great guests, experts in their field, that help us analyze and look at some of the topical issues of healthcare. And we are on 11 to 12, so please join us.
We'd love to answer your questions, so please share and watch and send us your questions and comments.
See you Sundays at 11.
So proud to work on that show. She's on Call every Sunday at 11. Please follow them on Facebook and on YouTube and on Twitter. Are you ready now to meet our young guest, who is not the youngest guest we've had? The youngest guest we've had is 7 years old, but this is the first time we have someone who has helped make such a big impact at such a young age. Briones Bedell will be with us. She's the California teenager who got Trader Joe's to change the names of products with racist names. And please welcome on our show, Briones. Hello.
Hi, thanks so much for taking the time to get the word out on this issue. I'm Briones.
Thanks for being here. So first, for question I always ask is, how are you? Where are you? How is your family doing through the COVID crisis?
I'm doing well. It's definitely been an eventful couple of weeks for me. I'm in the San Francisco Bay Area in California, and my family and I have been lucky enough not to have experienced any direct effects of COVID, but being in the house with my younger siblings has driven me a little bit crazy for over the past couple months. But thankfully, I'm healthy, I'm well, and I'm excited to be working on something that I care about.
So let's start at the beginning. Tell us how this all came about, and then we'll show people your petition. But and also, if it isn't clear where exactly you are in California, just what part of the Bay Area you're in?
Yeah, so I'm in Oakley, California, which is about 50 miles from San Francisco.
And where's that in relation to Oakland?
It's further inland.
Okay, further inland. All right. So start. You're an American teenager trying to survive COVID and get through it all, and something happens.
Yeah, so I'm a high school senior from the San Francisco Bay Area, and what inspired me to start this petition is, my family and I were fairly frequent patrons of Trader Joe's, which is a popular grocery chain in the United States. And I've noticed this problem for a while, but particularly in the last couple of weeks in the wake of other branding modifications such as Aunt Jemima's, Uncle Ben's, Land O'Lakes, that the branding choices are potentially a little bit problematic. And so for more background, Trader Joe's brands some of its ethnic foods with modifications of Joe, such as Trader Ming's for Chinese food, Trader Jose's for their Mexican food, and Thai Joe for their Thai food, among others. And I felt that this packaging, while insensitive, it perpetuated narratives of exoticism, and put into the larger context of the brand's corporate brand philosophy, it belies a narrative of exoticism that perpetuates harmful stereotypes. For example, so not only is there this issue of insensitive branding, but on the corporation's website, under their Our Story tab, they detail some of the sources that the founder, Joe Columbe, drew on for inspiration when designing this corporation in the, I believe, 60s or 70s. And so these would be White Shadows in the South Seas, which is a book that details the exploitation of the South Pacific by trading companies in the early 20th century, as well as the Disney Jungle Cruise Ride, which depicts Native peoples as uncivilized and violent. And it compelled me to speak up about it because in this country, we're having so much positive discussion about race issues, and people who may not have been comfortable or aware of some of these issues are contributing their voices to a larger conversation about race in this country. And I believe, this is a perfect time to bring it up. And if not now, then when? We're questioning these historical patterns of exploitation and really bringing to light some of the injustices. So I hope that by starting this petition, I can help to create some positive social change. And so far, I've been impressed with the response. I think we're at about 3,600 signers now. But yeah.
So let's read a little bit of some of the what you demanded that be changed. Your petition, which is on change.org, says, we demand that Trader Joe's remove racist branding and packaging from its stores. The grocery chain labels some of its ethnic foods with modifications of Joe that belies a narrative of exoticism with modifications of that perpetuates harmful stereotypes. Trader Ming's for Chinese food, Arabian Joe for Middle Eastern, Trader Jose for Mexican, Trader Giotto for Italian, and Trader Joe-san for Japanese cuisine. I was born in Japan, so I'm extra sensitive to racist Japanese stereotypes. Furthermore, the Trader Joe's company takes pride in the fact that the founder, Joe Colombo, took inspiration in building the Trader Joe's brand from a racist book and a controversial theme park attraction. And we learned this directly from the Trader Joe's website. So all of this happened when, give us the dates when you started this and tell us what's happened since.
Yeah, so I wrote and posted the petition on June 7th. So it's been about 2 weeks since the original point at which I posted it. And since then, it was quiet for a couple days while the petition was slowly gaining steam. And then it hit the first person to report on this, I believe this was 4 or 5 days ago, was the SF Gate. They were the person or the corporation that broke the story. And from then, it's been a lot of media attention, a lot of interviews, and Trader Joe's issuing a statement that they were already in the process of phasing some of these products out and that they should be able to complete this work soon. However, upon doing further research about the company and their previous assertions that they would remove this packaging, I noticed that they issued a nearly identical statement to the one that they issued to the San Francisco Gate on, I think 4 or 5 days ago, in an article in Nylon magazine almost a full year ago. However, Trader Joe's, to my knowledge, has not issued a specific time frame as to when the changes might happen, and nor has a company statement been issued regarding the broader corporate brand philosophy as pertains to the White Shadows in the South Seas book or the Disney Jungle Cruise ride. At my local Trader Joe's here in Northern California, I can say that the products are certainly well represented. They stay on shelves unaddressed. And so, although there's been a response, a large public response, as well as a somewhat of a response from Trader Joe's, I'm not quite satisfied or impressed with the response yet. And I think the petition remains important because Trader Joe's lacks the necessary urgency needed in the current political climate to remedy this issue and provide a public response to the controversy. The issues are layered and multifaceted, and I think Trader Joe's owes it to its customers to take accountability and be transparent.
Thank you. I'm reading these names. So I see Trader Ming's, I see Thai Joe, and I see, what else do I see on here? Maybe Arabian Joe, I see that. I mean, I'm laughing because it's so ridiculous. And Trader Joe-san, which is the Japanese tempura chicken. So let's unpack this a little bit and also hear from you what the reaction has been among friends and family. I can tell you that in our house, we love Trader Joe's. We think it's compared to so many other big chains, they treat their customers well. More importantly, they treat their staff, I believe, better than most. I've talked to them. People who work there for many years have said that to me. So it's kind of odd that of all the things that we could be talking about, here we are talking about this. So this is not to attack Trader Joe's other policies or to say that they're worse than anybody else. But in this particular thing, sometimes we have to hold the brands we love to a higher standard. What do you say about that? And what has the reaction been? Did anybody else have that feeling like, oh no, not Trader Joe?
Yeah, I mean, that was absolutely my feeling as well. I'll admit, my family and I were fairly regular patrons of the grocery chain, and it came as a bit of a shock. Like I had noticed it before in passing, but when I actually stopped to think about why this branding was so insensitive and the fact that it's continued for this long, I was genuinely surprised. There seems to be such little negative press about Trader Joe's in general because they have this almost cult-like fan base here in the United States, and it feels almost as if that nobody can criticize them without getting a significant amount of backlash. And I've certainly experienced that. There's been a lot of negative feedback from people who either love the chain or feel that this is detracting from issues that are more pressing. A good example of this is a lot of people have expressed to me that while this is an interesting topic, an interesting issue, it may be detracting from the broader message that about racial inequality and injustice that we've been dealing with in this country, primarily being police brutality. And so my response to that, and I haven't responded publicly to either negative or positive comments, because again, my ultimate goal in starting this petition is to raise awareness and simply start a conversation so that we might continue this frank discussion of cultural sensitivity and race that we're having currently. However, I've given some thought to this because of some of the amount of negative feedback. And I think that, the branding is insensitive, but you could call this issue trivial, but I believe it takes on another layer of symbolism when we consider the other issues that we are currently reckoning with as a country. Some would argue there are clearly more serious issues that are going on right now. Like I said, things like police brutality, in which actual lives are lost, clearly affect people more in the day-to-day. And however, I've noticed this particularly among my peers as a high school student. There's this heightened sense of awareness given to identifying and then weeding out systemic racism on all scales. For example, police brutality affects someone very tangibly in an immeasurable way, but the fact that statues, university buildings, and military bases are still named after Confederate soldiers makes many people feel unwelcome in their own country. But in a broader context, and most relevantly here, it allows us to see that there is racist sentiment on many levels, and that both actual violence, as in the case of police brutality, as well as more symbolic racism, are both worth our time addressing and resolving.
Thank you for saying that and sharing that. One of the things that we want to ask you about is, did you get a call or anything from Trader Joe's?
Yeah, that's the one thing that surprised me. I actually haven't heard directly from the corporation. I've heard from others that the company is notoriously tight-lipped about their policies and their public image, and that might have something to do with the almost kind of pristine public reputation that Trader Joe's holds, at least online. But I haven't heard anything directly. I would definitely appreciate a response at some point to the petition, as I think that Trader Joe's should either commit to a date in which they should phase this packaging out, or they should remove the insensitive branding. I've seen a lot of headlines circulating saying that essentially the fight's over and that it's been resolved, but I think there's definitely there's more to go. Like, it hasn't been won yet, and I'm excited.
Why is that? Just to be clear, yeah. So I did see headlines like that, and they issued a statement. I'm going to try to find that statement, but you can tell me why you're saying the fight isn't over.
Yeah, so their statement is that they've been working on this issue for some time now, and they expect to make these packaging changes soon. The reason that I don't think that this is quite over yet is because this is a nearly identical statement to one that they issued to a reporter last year to Nylon Magazine, well over a year ago at this point. And I haven't, as a consumer, I haven't seen any difference in the packaging or branding at my local store. And I think that Trader Joe's, in this current climate, in the wake of other brand modifications, does owe it to its customers to be transparent and commit to a date, or either commit to removing products that they themselves have recognized have not been conducive to a welcoming or inclusive customer experience.
So here's the headline in the Washington Post: Trader Joe's removing racist packaging after online petition. So you do get the credit for it. They're not saying we were already doing it, but you're seeing this here. So let's fast forward into here so I can read the statement from company spokesman Kenya Friend Daniel. While this approach to product naming may have been rooted in a lighthearted attempt at inclusiveness, we recognize that it may now have the opposite effect, one that is contrary to the welcoming, rewarding customer experience we strive to create every day. The grocer said that it already has changed the packaging on a number of products, and it expects to complete the process very soon. So, and there you are in the Washington Post. But your just to be clear, your complaint is that they haven't committed to any actual change, and that they said the same thing a year ago when someone else brought this up. Is that correct?
Yeah, absolutely. And then a further issue is that the brand hasn't issued any statement regarding the White Shadows in the South Seas book or the Disney Jungle Cruise ride and how those have influenced their greater corporate brand philosophy as a whole. And it pertains directly, I think, to the insensitive packaging because it adds this other layer of essentially question as to why this was inspirational to the founding of a grocery store. But also just as broader as a company. I think it's something that they should answer to, it being the 21st century, and we're kind of uncovering these historical patterns of exploitation and trying to get to the root of them and resolve them to eliminate institutional and structural racism.
I will say to anybody who says that this story is not that important, we should only focus on more serious, so-called more serious issues. This show has time for all of it because we're here every single day for 132 straight days. We've been able to cover very serious topics, such as yesterday's story about what's happening in Portland. I want everybody to go back and watch this. What's happening with the federal government stepping in to Portland is scary, and a dry run for what Trump has threatened to do in Chicago, in New York, and other cities. So please watch this episode yesterday. And I'm going to take this chance also to tell everybody about some of the other shows we have coming up. We have a whole week of fantastic programming. Today is our session with Briones Bedell, who's talking about how she's made change, and we'll ask her for tips for other topics that people may want to make a change on. And then tomorrow we have a return guest. Tanya Reese is with us. She was with us about 100 days ago when she talked about the work that she was doing with Edelman in brand trust. And she'll be back because they have some new research under coronavirus that you don't want to miss. And it's a special time, 3 p.m. New York City time. That's 12:30 a.m. in India on Wednesday. Of course, you can find this all on our archives as well. And then on Thursday, we have a very unusual show because this is Briones is a newsmaker of one kind, but we have a global newsmaker who will be with us for a very important episode. Our guest is Maria Ressa. She's the journalist convicted by the Philippines, along with her colleague Ray Santos, of cyber libel. The former CNN journalist is head of Rappler, a news site that's critical of President Rodrigo Duterte. Both have been released on bail pending appeal, but could face 6 years in prison. The case is being seen as a test of press freedom in the Philippines and in the broader context in Asia and elsewhere. Our producer, Rose Horowitz, will join me to interview Maria Ressa. So you don't want to miss this. It's 9 p.m. in America, so roughly the same time as today's show. It'll be 9 a.m. on Friday in the Philippines. So Thursday, 9 p.m. and 9 a.m. Friday in the Philippines. So watch for that. And then finally, there's a huge show, a trending top 10 show in American Netflix that we wanted to learn more about. It's called Indian Matchmaking. And some of you may have seen this already. Obviously, many of you have seen it because it's doing so well. And we have the executive producer of Indian Matchmaking and one of the characters on the show, one of the participants, one of the reality stars of the show, Vyasar Ganeshan, will be with us along with Smriti Mundra. She's also the Oscar-nominated director of St. Louis Superman. And you don't want to miss this. It's on Friday night in New York. That'll be Saturday, 6:30 a.m. in India. So lots going on. Thank you so much for watching. We're going to go back to our conversation with Briones as she talks about what she's learned through this work. And you should know that Briones says she's a youth human rights activist. So tell us what that means first.
Yeah, so prior to this experience writing and promoting Petition for Trader Joe's, I've been involved in work that aims to protect intangible cultural content and heritage in archival institutions such as museums, archives, and libraries, and how they can curate and display traditional cultural content in a respectful manner while employing free, prior, and informed consent standards when working with source communities. Previously, I presented on these issues at the World Intellectual Property Organization and a variety of other venues, but I think my prior interest and involvement in these topics, although these topics are unrelated, they are adjacent, and they may be more sensitive to what I perceive as the trivializing impact of Trader Joe's branding, which then compelled me to speak up about it. Because the central issue at the heart of all of this is that when any community is not allowed control over their representation, harmful stereotypes and caricatures are allowed to be perpetuated. And while this might seem sort of unrelated to a store's choice of branding, I think we can derive and then apply some of the lessons learned here to other cases of cultural insensitivity, as in the case of Trader Joe's branding of ethnic foods, with titles such as Trader Ming's, Trader Jose, etc. And you know, there's been a lot of talk about why exactly is exoticization a harmful tool instead of a harmless sort of.
Lighthearted is the word they used, yeah.
Huh?
They use the word lighthearted.
Lighthearted, yeah. So, you know, I don't personally, and I understand that some people may disagree with me, but I don't personally see it as a lighthearted attempt at inclusion, because even if that was the aim, the effect of it, and we've seen this with some other controversial packaging, is that these brands aren't really cultural celebration or representation. They're shells of the cultures they claim to represent, because they rely only on caricatures and vague ideas and not anything of actual substance and legitimacy. My prior work on intangible cultural content is different, because in this case there's no community or communities to work with in order to make sure that, you know, representation is correct. I'm not necessarily suggesting that, because their branding doesn't actually represent actual cultures. It's only stereotypes of cultures, and they need to remove the names because they don't really seem to serve any purpose whatsoever. I mean, under the Trader Jose's label, there's food sourced from New Mexico, Mexico, and Spain. Under the Trader Ming's label, there's pad thai, gyoza, pot stickers, and satay. And it begs the question, who are these characters exactly? And who, in, you know, Trader Joe's words, do they aim to represent? All their products, I mean, in the baseline is that all their products could just be named Trader Joe's. The branding doesn't seem to serve any real sort of advantage. It's not funny or cute, in my opinion. And furthermore, there's no real defense or explanation as to why these foods are exotic or even authentic, as many of the packages claim. You know, it's insidious because it's subtle. It's a tool of othering, and there are microaggressions, in my view, because, and this is a problem because microaggressions inevitably escalate. When we accept this baseline level of stereotyping and othering, we're more likely to accept larger transgressions down the road.
Thank you for all your work on this. I also, of course, am thinking about the other big grocery store kerfuffle that's going on right now, which is around the Goya brand.
Yeah.
And most people know Goya, a brand that is very popular in the United States, not just by people who like to make so-called Hispanic food, but anybody who wants particular kinds of vegetables or canned goods. They're only available often under the Goya brand in many supermarkets and things. The CEO went to the White House and said very nice things about President Trump, and the internet lost its mind. The folks who hate President Trump called for a boycott, and then some others who support President Trump started buying Goya food. So overall, I think all it did was bring attention to Goya. There's a New York Times article right here. It says, beans, boycotts, and the politics of pantry items. So this all broke before your story. Otherwise, that would have also been thrown into this. There wasn't a boycott really needed because it seemed to us that things have already started to be fixed, but you're not completely there yet. in terms of what happens next. But one of the things we do on the show is we have a global tour where people come in and share where they're watching from. So I wanted you to watch and respond to some of these folks who are watching, and tell us if you've been to any of these places. If you've, I don't know if you've had much of a chance to travel. We should remind everyone who's watching, our guest is a high school senior, right? A rising senior, as they say. When people ask her, what did you do during the summer? She'll say she changed $1 billion corporation and helped bring attention to racial stereotyping and brought some change. What did you do during your summer? Well, what a lot of us will be wondering and saying, wow, this young person has outshined us all. Let's see who's watching. Rajan is watching from Long Island. Have you been to New York?
I have.
Okay.
I really enjoyed it.
And from the East Village is Jonathan Borstein, who's watched for 132 straight days. Hi, Jonathan.
Hello. Hi, Jonathan.
He says where the local bodega is still preferred over Trader Joe's. As I said early, if you missed it, we are big fans of Trader Joe's in our household. And I never noticed these titles, so that's on me that I didn't notice them. But it doesn't matter. You know, there are certainly more famous grocery stores that are have much worse reputations in how they pay their staff, how they treat their customers, etc. Trader Joe's has a good reputation, and I've talked to workers there. They seem generally, you know, within the context of how we treat people, essential workers in the midst of COVID pandemic and everything else, they are relatively considered to be good guys. So this might have surprised some people that this is the company that's getting called out on this. So we'll keep that in mind as we go along. Have you been to India by any chance?
I haven't.
All
I'd
right.
always like to, though.
Yeah, so Anand is watching from India. Giant says good morning. Makran says namaste from Curry Hill, also known as, there's a place called Murray Hill, so we call it Curry Hill because a lot of Indian restaurants there. And Neil is a Trader Joe's fan from Springfield, Virginia. He and his young daughter were on our show together. She was our youngest guest. She was 7 years old, and she talked about life under COVID as a 7-year-old. And here you are at 17 with us. Paula Kiger is here. She and Neil produce our amazing weekly show called the New York Times Read Along, where we read the New York Times out loud, sort of like crazy people. And we've been doing it for 5 years. It'll be 5 years this October. And on that show, we get to talk about the New York Times and read it out loud on Facebook and other platforms. 8:30 to 10:15 every Sunday morning. Please join us. This week, we're super excited. Anthony DePalma, a 22-year New York Times reporter and foreign correspondent who has reported out of Latin America, Mexico, Cuba, and other places. He's a legend, and he will be with us this Sunday at 8:30 a.m. Eastern Time. I presume, like all good 17-year-olds, our guest hasn't seen 8:30 a.m. on a Sunday unless she has to.
That's fair.
But we should point out that we have guests in California when it's 5:30 in the morning who join us. And a little later, we'll be joined by Doug Levy, who many of you have met. He's been on a guest on the show multiple times. He is going to tell us what happened today at the White House when the first coronavirus task force press conference in months happened publicly today. So we'll hear about that, and also about the newsletter he writes that nobody should miss. His Twitter handle is SFDoug, and he'll be with us in a few minutes. Let's just keep going with this global tour. Have you been to Florida?
I have not.
Okay, so Neil says, I'd heard about the petition, didn't realize they changed the product names. Wow. So that's the speed at which things are happening. And Rose is one of our producers who found you and booked you like that. So thanks to both of you. Julia is watching from Brooklyn, amazing photographer. She has a great show of her own. It's called Navy Yard Neighbor, and she's in the Brooklyn Navy Yard. And all these great folks here. Stefan, who also has a great show called the Spin It Social Hour, is with us, and he's on my team at Digimentors. And Rajan says, Trader Joe's and Aldi have the same parent company. As a single person, I do most of my grocery shopping at Aldi. So this is of special interest to me. And so there is a parent company also. I'm just realizing we don't have Aldi here in Manhattan, or at least not that I know of, so I'm not familiar with that. But I've been there once. And Ellen's watching from the Upper East Side of New York. Loeb Sharma is watching from Kerala in India. Aparna Mukherjee is watching from LA. Tend to agree with Paul Krugman on this count. So I'll have to go check what that says. Maybe somebody else can type in what Paul Krugman said because I'm not able to click through very easily. Mark is watching from Durham, North Carolina, and home of some of the great colleges in America, that whole region. So let me ask you, what are your college plans and what are you planning to do next year?
Yeah, I'm pretty indecisive, but I definitely want to do something that's going to allow me to continue to, have the flexibility to do this kind of work. I've eyed history or journalism in the past, and I'm excited to kind of start that process this fall.
All right. Did you take the SATs?
I did.
And are you happy, or are you going to take it again, or what's the plan?
I'm pretty happy with it. I was going to take it again in August, but that's not looking so great with COVID and all.
And Rajan says that Trader Joe's has 503 stores.
Wow.
In 42 states and Washington, D.C. So it's a big brand, obviously, and doing, has a big impact. And here's somebody criticizing you, says, I'm not showing her name because these trolls, I'm no fan of the trolls. She says, this is a disgusting race bait effort, what you're doing, Briones.
Yeah, I can definitely understand disagreement, and I welcome a conversation because, regardless of how people feel about this petition, it seems like people have a viewpoint and an opinion on it. And I think that's the beauty of the petition, is that a lot of different people are expressing viewpoints, out in the open about Trader Joe's and just about race issues in this country in general. And so while I might not agree with you, I can respect your opinion, and I'm glad that it's creating a conversation nonetheless.
Thank you. Joelle says hello, and thank you, Joelle, for your nice words. Mark is watching, says, a friend of mine wrote this editorial about schools where he feels the online learning is creating a separate but equal style of teaching again. Wonder what the guests think about this. So talk about school for a minute. You're getting ready to go back in California, but they may not have school in person. What is in your part of California, what's the situation?
Yeah, so I'm a private school student. I actually go to Stanford Online High School, so I was online before the pandemic. So I've been lucky enough to be able to kind of have a seamless transition, and I'll go back to school online in August as well. But I know that it's been definitely very difficult transitioning from one style of learning to the other. And while I do appreciate the effort to bring things online, feedback that I've heard from friends is that it's been a very messy process, but hopefully with some experience and, next semester, it will be more productive of a school year.
So you think they'll have learned more and will be ready in a better way?
I think so.
I told I think I may have mentioned this to you, my twins are 17. Also, they're rising seniors in New York. They were guests on the show to talk about what it's like to be 17-year-old. They turned 17 during COVID. Nothing worse I can think of than turning 17 with your parents and stuck at home with them. So talk about that for yourself, what it's been like, your social life, your study life, your friends, and how locked down have you been?
Yeah, my family and I have been, I think, especially cautious. I have not been to a grocery store since March. It's been definitely personally frustrating to be indoors, locked inside. I kind of live out of the way as well. But that's been a nice change because I can go for a walk. It's fairly quiet. There's wildlife. And I've certainly found things to keep myself busy during this quarantine. And although I'm disappointed that it's continuing, as long as it has, I understand the necessity. And I'm glad that most people within my social circle have been as cooperative as they can. We've been, supplementing what we usually do with a lot of, FaceTimes and watching videos over Zoom. And so I think one thing that I've really been impressed with is that people don't complain as much as you think they would. And we're really just trying to make the best of a difficult situation for everyone while keeping ourselves and our loved ones safe.
Sure. Thank you. Apollo is with us. Apollo is watching from Vegas. In fact, he was the star, along with Terry Thompson, of our episode on Vegas under COVID which was last Friday. All of these shows you can find in our archives. We have 132 episodes. People are saying nationwide coverage of this nonsense from a high school girl who wants to win college admissions points. I'm sorry, I should have even started reading that. I'm not showing it on screen. What do you say to people who say you're doing this for things like that? So terrible. I apologize for bringing it up.
It's all good. I've seen much worse on Twitter and sent directly to me. I can understand that generally as a culture, we don't have a whole lot of respect for young people, and we tend to think it's either their parents or there's some ulterior motive behind it. I can say with 100% certainty, this is something that I certainly do care about, and I've demonstrated in the past, that I'm interested in human rights. Although my presence on social media is new, my interest is not, and it doesn't bother me too much.
And we should tell you that you can find Briones on Twitter and on Instagram. That is her public account, Briones Bedell, and that's I've never heard that first name before. What's the origin of that?
Yeah, it was a regional park that I grew up near, and my parents decided to name me after it.
It's a park? You said it's a park?
Yeah, regional park, like a nature preserve.
Oh wow, okay. And what is that named after? Do you know?
I'm not exactly sure. I should find that out.
Yeah, some reporter is going to ask you that for sure.
Yeah.
So this Julia woman who is kind of haranguing a young person like you is saying that this is all absolutely absurd. But Rajan writes back, it's not a trivial issue at all, in my opinion. Stereotyping of cultures should not be normalized. Cindy says, I enjoy shopping at TJ's. I love the ethnic experience. I liken it to going to It's a Small World ride at Disneyland, and where diversity and cultural differences are embraced. So what is your response?
I definitely can see how as Trader Joe's framed it, it's a lighthearted attempt at inclusion. My personal reasoning is that given the history of race in this country and the way that we've fetishized and in turn demeaned and belittled other cultures, makes it so that I have heard people expressing offense, and while many people might not find it offensive, I think it's always good to stay ahead of the curve and continue to frame our corporate, personal, social decisions off of the most inclusive parameters and standards possible. But I can definitely understand your viewpoint, and I respect it.
Wow, this Julia person has a lot of time on their hands. She's writing away. I presume that's her real name. Who knows on Facebook? But Mark says, does anyone else find it ironic that the spokesperson was probably an African-American woman? So that touches upon another thing. One of the criticisms is that you are white and you're stepping up. I don't think that the only people allowed to criticize white people or point out ethnic stereotyping are non-white people. So tell us how you fit into that conversation, how you are able to step up and talk and not be cowed down by somebody who will say, look at this white woman talking about this.
Yeah, absolutely.
And by the way, I was just presuming you were white, so.
No, I know. That's how I would identify. I totally understand some of the backlash, right? That essentially, I think that at the heart of it is that I haven't lived the same experiences as many of the people that I'm aiming to not represent, but essentially remove those ethnic stereotypes from the Trader Joe's brand are represented by. And I wouldn't claim to have lived through those experiences or understand intimately, exactly how that experience affects people. However, given some of my background talking about cultural heritage and listening from others that have expressed concern about trivializing, I think from an academic standpoint, I can understand the history and reasons behind why this kind of branding is insensitive and demeaning. And I hope to continue to hear from others about their viewpoints and again, start a conversation. I'd like to essentially be a facilitator rather than trying, I certainly have my cause and my opinion, but I'd like to be a facilitator of a broader discussion rather than trying to detract from a broader narrative or bring attention away from other voices in the conversation.
So this Julia woman is constantly posting And she says, did she ask how they feel about their ethnicities, names, and images erased from their culture's food? So let's just point out, there is no they to ask. What are you supposed to do? Go and ask every Japanese person you meet, how do you feel about being called Trader Joe-san? Or every Mexican American you meet saying, how do you like being called Trader Jose? That is not how this works. And this Julia person is constantly, she says that you're not giving up the limelight for a minute, and then she's posting and posting and posting. But there is a good Julia who is with us. Julia Weeks says, thank you for doing this work. This is not the Julia I was referring to, in case you get confused when you check back into the comments later. So many comments coming in. We want to, oh my God, I'm trying to skip past the other Julia. She has so much time on this. Macron says, Briones, I think I need to learn a lot from you. Thank you. So that's also the kind of reaction we're getting. And oh my God, this woman has so much time on her hands to call you out and call you out and call you out.
Hey, it's attention to the cause. I try not to be offended by it. It's clearly stirring up emotions, and my intention isn't to offend anybody. But again, I'm open to hearing all sorts of different viewpoints. And again, I'm surprised that it's made this much of an impact in this, national attention, and I'm incredibly grateful.
International attention.
Yeah, I guess that's true. Yeah. I had a friend call me from Denmark this morning saying that it was on the news, and I was like, oh my gosh, I never would have imagined.
And Apollo has good advice for you. He says, you're amazing. Never let this go.
Oh, thank you.
That's great. And you don't need anybody's permission, but you're doing it anyway. And he says he himself is a huge Trader Joe's fan, didn't notice the titles. And
they're easy to miss.
Yeah. Rajan says, I hate microaggressions. As an amateur photographer, I've heard too many times Asians with cameras remarks over the years, and then told I shouldn't be so sensitive and that you're only looking for something to be offended about. And I have two 17-year-olds, as I mentioned. They are much more alert and aware of racism. And when even someone like me, I'm an old, and so I step over the line because of just being old. And so I've become much more aware thanks to the 17-year-olds in my life. And lots of other comments coming in from everywhere. We won't be able to go through them. If you get a chance, this other Julia is still going on. She has so much time. Imagine if she just spent that energy doing something good in the world. But she has decided to attack a 17-year-old in public again and again and again and again. And just amazing. All of this is going on. Anyway, so if you'll stand by, I'm going to bring in my friend from San Francisco. So you said about 50 miles away from you is our friend Doug Levy. Doug writes a newsletter that everybody should get. It's a newsletter about 3 headlines from the coronavirus story every day. So he's going to brief us on what the heck happened today at the White House, and also why the president was seen today on a tweet wearing a mask. And then we'll come back to you in a couple of minutes. So let's bring on Doug Levy. Hi, Doug. Hold on one second. There you are.
Hey there.
Hi, Doug. Can you hear me? Can you see us? Hi. Doug is, look at that. He's got his messaging on brand. Cover your face, give others space, wash your hands, stop COVID-19. Doug was a guest more than 100 episodes, 100 days ago when we talked about life under COVID. California was bad then, and then California got better. And now California is as bad, if not worse, than the worst performers. And so I want to hear why it is like that from Doug. And then we're going to talk about his newsletter, and then we're going to talk about the president and what happened today at the White House. So go ahead, Doug.
Well, thanks for having me on here. I'm not sure California is heading into the worst category, but we definitely are in trouble. And it's an interesting confluence of factors. Today we had data showing that Orange County, California, which is just south of Los Angeles, generally a fairly conservative area, mostly Republican voters, they were I believe, the first or one of the first counties in the state to relax the social distancing rules. They actually ousted their public health director, and the very first thing that her replacement did in early June was rescind the mask order. Orange County is now almost the worst in terms of number of COVID cases in California. They're second only to Riverside County, which has a very large number of low-wage worker, immigrant families, really hard hit there. But Orange County relaxed their restrictions toward the end of May, right before Memorial Day, including opening up restaurants. And they are now in the middle of a huge surge. So that's a real problem. The overall increase in cases in California is from a couple of things. One is there was a lot of political pressure to open up early. And the governor, as good as he was, in hindsight, we know now that it was a mistake. What he did was he set the standard at the state level and then allowed the counties to decide on their own if they were meeting that standard. If they did, they could go ahead and relax the rules. I'm lucky. I'm in a county that actually went on the very cautious side, which has turned out to be a really good thing. But a lot of places rushed to open. And as we've seen in Florida and Texas and almost everywhere else, a lot of people thought it was like flicking a light switch, and they immediately rushed to have parties or hang out together. Bars were crowded and the beaches were crowded, and it was bad. And that's why we're seeing the surge throughout the state. But we also are having people traveling. There was some very interesting data from usafacts.org, I think this was yesterday, that showed how many people from Arizona and Florida and Texas have traveled to other places in the last couple of weeks. The absence of a national strategy means that the rules for travel, the rules for quarantining, the rules for social distancing, the rules for what businesses can operate are different from state to state, and in some cases, county to county. So there's no control. And we're seeing that now.
Thanks, Doug, for sharing that. Let me ask Briones, how come you and your friends haven't kind of gone with the more relaxed rules now that California opened those a few weeks ago?
Personally, I'm just terrified of getting sick and getting those around me sick. I have friends from a variety of different political, alignments, and I've seen the essentially anti-mask sentiment growing, and I don't want to be a part of, I don't want to essentially encourage in any way, shape, or form not wearing a mask, not social distancing. I want to take as many precautions as I can, and I think also already coming from an online school and a lot of online interaction, it's been easier for me to transition, although I definitely 100% understand the urge to want to go out there and socialize with your friends and go back to life as normal. Although there is this growing sentiment that it might not return to life as normal anytime soon, if ever.
And that's so sad to hear a young person who is otherwise optimistic and wants to change the world have to think like that. Doug, I want to ask you a direct question. You're in the part of the country that was the earliest to shut down, thanks to the mayor of San Francisco, London Breed. And do you feel at all that by reopening too fast and giving in to those conservative voices in Orange County and elsewhere, that the work, the sacrifice, the effort, the pain of the first 100-something days has been lost?
A lot of it has been lost, no question about it. I also think that we are absolutely better off having done what we did. But the reality is that, and I actually feel even worse for the people. Here in the Bay Area, we've got a fairly well-educated population. Private sector employers actually shut down even before it became a government mandate. So there was a tremendous awareness of why the shutdown was happening and what it meant and so on. And we have a lot of people that could work from home. But if you go to a place like much of New York, Massachusetts, Rhode Island, the places where shutdown really meant crippling things, the shutdown was important. It flattened the curve. Particularly, Rhode Island's actually a great example. And now we wind up with all these cases coming in from other states. That all that good was erased. And unfortunately, there were, pandemic scholars and epidemiologists who warned us at the beginning that you have to take this seriously. And I mean, again, hindsight's 2020. If you look at how other countries handled the mitigation strategy and the containment strategy, the places that did a hard lockdown where people literally stayed home, not stayed home except when you felt like going outside, like in Italy, they got control of their epidemic by shutting down. And it was painful, but after, I think it was about 6 weeks, they were able to emerge in a strategic and measured way. Had we opened up a little more slowly, I think California would be in better shape, but the pressure from the other states has been insurmountable.
Thank you, Doug. I want to tell everybody that Doug has a terrific book that he published within weeks of the coronavirus being locked down in America. It's called The Communications Handbook for Coronavirus, and you can find it at all bookstores. It's for communications best practices for leaders in business, government, public health, and elsewhere. So please check that out. And I'm going to now have him tell us about his terrific newsletter that I get every day.
Thanks. This started out mostly because I had friends asking me, okay, so what's really happening? What do we need to know? And then I had clients starting to ask about this. And, I just put my journalist hat back on. I used to cover healthcare for USA Today. So covering the CDC and NIH, that was my everyday thing for a really long time. I've basically put it back to use. The other thing is that I've been on the medical center side as well. So I've actually been in 2 cases on the committees that manage and plan for pandemic response. So I try to use those lenses and pick out the stories that matter the most. And it's grown. I used to whittle it down to 3 stories every day. Now it's more like 5, but I try to make
Don't grow it too much, Doug. We want it to be easier to digest because that's what makes it so special, but you do a fantastic job. Please subscribe, douglevy.substack.com, douglevy.substack.com, and while you're at it, sreenet.substack.com. Those are our platforms that we use, Substack instead of MailChimp. That's all that is. So please check those out. And now tell us about what happened at the White House today.
Believe it or not, the president said, get a mask, wear a mask. And I'm kind of surprised. The problem is that it's not what he's said before, and the damage has already been done. We've literally had people killed over whether they have to wear a mask. We had the security guard in Michigan
at the dollar store. Tragic story. Yeah.
Right, and there have been a lot of hostile interactions that could have been avoided had the president just been open to masks. One of the things that he said today is that he's never opposed them. Well, we know that's not true.
Not true.
and that, back to why California has had a new surge in cases, a lot of the surge everywhere is directly traceable to people who don't believe this thing is dangerous. And they don't believe experts like Tony Fauci when the president says something different. The president was saying, it's just going to miraculously go away. And he said that again in the last 24 hours. So, the good thing is that he seems to have said out loud on tape for all to hear that this is going to get worse before it gets better. It's incredibly sad. Had he said something like that even a month ago, it would make a difference. We are right now in some communities at a point where it's no longer an outbreak. We've got a virus that is almost endemic. One of the other bits of news today is the CDC published the first batch of data from what's called serology testing. And this actually came out later in the day, so it's not even in today's newsletter. It'll be in tomorrow's. But what they've done is they're looking at pools of blood samples from commercial labs in different metropolitan areas and testing all of them anonymously to determine the prevalence of COVID-19 infection in the population. And based on, I believe 10 cities have been studied so far, going back as far as about April. The CDC is now estimating that the actual number of COVID-19 infections is anywhere from 2 to 13 times higher than what we know.
Wow, that's really scary.
Yeah, but there was a survey out this morning that showed a third of people in the United States think the death numbers are false and that it's actually not killing people.
And of course, they are false, meaning they're actually undercounting, but we're told they were overcounted. You're listening to all of this, so I want to get the 17-year-old's perspective on this. And after you tell us that, what your reaction is, Briones, people are trying to read the book titles behind you. So maybe you'll tell us what those books are after you tell us your thoughts here.
Yeah, of course. So I think it's incredibly unfortunate that we've had leadership that has, you know, at the baseline level, let's say, I mean, I believe entirely in the science that masks do work. They're instrumental in controlling the spread. But let's say that there is some question as to whether or not they work. Having basic consideration and compassion for your fellow citizen, and even for yourself, your self-protection, I think I'm definitely surprised. I'm pleasantly surprised that the president has come out and said that, you know, masks are a good thing, or at least an acceptable thing. I wish it would have happened sooner, because I think there's been a lot of unnecessary suffering and death as a result of that encouragement. But I think it speaks less to any one person's particular leadership, but also a cultural kind of sentiment that many Americans have, which is, you know, it's up to individual choice, and it's a message, and it's a vehicle by which to, you know, express your free speech, which I think is unfortunate. And I think we should focus a little bit more on empathy and consideration. Also, the book titles. There's Atlas Obscura. I love that book. There's Ocean.
Sorry, you know, when you look away, we're missing what you're saying. Do you mind bringing them? Do you mind bringing them up? Do you mind doing that?
Yeah,
so
sure.
So you can hold them a little closer. If they're, you can slide over and pick them up.
Okay, great.
Okay, so we'll just take you off camera while you do that.
Okay, sounds great.
Thank you, folks. In just a minute, we're going to read. We're going to do one thing that we do on this episode on the show every night. We say their names. I asked Kimberly Crenshaw, the great professor, on another show. I asked her, how can we as allies participate and help? And she said, say their names. And we're going to do that in just a few minutes. By the way, our friend Julia the Troll is at it. She's just going on. And Rajan went out and found out that she's a Phi Beta Kappa using her energies incorrectly. We're not trying to dox her or anything. This is who she is. She's using her name. She's out there. She has, anybody who goes on my Facebook can see it. She's out there posting. But this is, and she's asking Doug to ask Briones the same thing I already asked her. Why is a 17-year-old white teenager qualified to do all this? We already asked this, asked and answered by Briones about what's happening. So Briones is now going to tell us the titles of the book she has.
Yeah, so one of them is Atlas Obscura. It's a great book.
Sorry, hold that again. Hold that up again.
Atlas
that's a fantastic book. Started as a website or blog.
Yeah, and I have the calendar every year now. I really do appreciate it. And I'm a big animal fan, big into wildlife. And this is the other one.
Hold it up higher. We got to hold it up higher. Okay. There you go.
The
Guide to Marine Mammals of the World by Peter Falcon something. Okay.
But yeah, those are the ones I wanted to share.
All right, nice. So this is what happens. People have time on their hands when they're looking at the screen, and so they're doing that. So with that, we're going to now say their names. And Doug, will you join us as we do this?
Absolutely.
So how we're going to do this is we are going to pull up the list of names that have been compiled on the internet, and we're going to say them together. And let me just pull up first to show everybody how we used to do this alone. We used to read the names that were on this Time magazine cover story. And that's Briones, have you ever seen this cover of Time magazine? And very striking. And then this photograph on the right that is new to many people, that's young George Floyd with his mother, Larcinia. And she would die 2 years, almost to the day that he would be killed. And they're now buried together next to each other in Houston. Such a stunning photograph and cover. I just, every day we've been talking and reading this. So tonight what we're going to do is we are going to say her name, which came from the ask from Professor Crenshaw, and Rajan and other viewers directed me to this list on the internet, and we're going to say her name. So what we'll do is we'll ask Doug to start us off. Doug, read a few names, and then we'll hand it over to Brianna, and then she'll read a few names and hand it over to me. And then Doug, I'm going to spare you trying to read those very tiny letters on the other side, because I can barely read them, and my face is up against the screen, so I'm not going to force you to do that. So let's start with you, Doug.
Okay. I'm going to do my best to read, put my glasses on. Brianna Taylor, Atliana Jefferson, Charlena Siobhan Lyles, Corin Gaines, India Kager, Sandra Bland, Alexia Christian, Maya Hall, Megan Hockaday, Janisha Fonville, Natasha McKenna, Tanisha Anderson, Aura Rosser, Shanika Proctor, Michelle Cousseau, Pearlie Golden, Gabriela Navarez, Yvette Smith.
Thank you, Doug. You did. I know it's hard to read those and difficult. One of the things as we read the second list, Briones is going to start us on that. Just keep in mind, how many of these names have you heard before? The answer is going to be very few. Even in this situation, the stories of the men are better known. Both the stories of the men and the women need to be better known. So please go ahead, Briones, the second list.
Renisha McBride, Miriam Carey, Kayam Livingston, Kayla Moore, Shelley Frey, Melissa Williams, Jolena Weldon, Alicia Thomas, Chantel Davis, Sharmel Edwards, Rikia Boyd, Sree Francis, Ayanna Stanley Jones, Tarika Welshin, Katherine Johnston, Alberta Spruell, Kendra James, Latanya Haggerty, Margaret Laverne Mitchell, Taisha Miller, Daniette Daniels, Frankie Ann Perkins, Sonia Taylor, and Eleanor Boomhorse.
Thank you. Both of you are reading it cold for the first time. I know I've been reading it for several days now, and I find it difficult and also just hard to get through these names. Thank you for joining us on what I believe is a very special and sacred opportunity that we have on this show. We have the time, the space, and the audience that wants us to join us in saying their names. So with that, we're going to thank everyone for watching. We want to remind you of the shows we have coming up before we give our speakers a final opportunity to give us their final thoughts for this show. So I want to remind you that tomorrow we have a special show at 3 p.m. Eastern Time, 12:30 a.m. in India, noon in California. Brand Trust with Edelman. Tanya Reese, Executive Director of Intellectual Property at Edelman, will be back with new survey, new results. And David Bursoff will be here, Head of Thought Leadership Research at Edelman. At her last appearance, she said to us that one of the things people want to hear from brands, they want solutions, not sales. Solutions, not sales. And that's what we have modeled our company on, that we want to offer solutions, not sales, in the virtual events and other businesses. Now, I want to tell you of what's happening. So today's Tuesday, that's Wednesday. On Thursday, on Thursday night, we have Maria Ressa with us. She's the Filipino journalist and the head of Rappler, former CNN journalist. This website has been critical of President Duterte, who is an authoritarian and who is a good friend of President Trump. She has been released on bail pending appeal. She could face 6 years in prison with her colleague, Ray Santos. The case is being seen as a test of press freedom all over Asia, and of course in the Philippines in particular. Please join us for that show on Thursday night at 9 p.m. On Friday night at 9 p.m., A Change of Pace, Netflix Indian Matchmaking. This is a top 10 show in the United States, and Smriti Mundra, the executive producer of Indian Matchmaking, will be with us. She's the Oscar-nominated director of St. Louis Superman. And Vyasar Ganeshan will be with us. He was a participant, a character. I'm not sure what you call the folks who are in reality shows. What do you call them? Maybe Doug knows what you call those people. So he's not an actor. He was playing himself on this show, and he'll be with us along with Smriti on Friday night. So if you haven't seen it already, it is quite an unusual show. Someone said they couldn't take their eyes off the train wreck as they were watching that. So check that out. Obviously, lots of Indian Americans are watching it, but most people watching it are not Indian American or not from India. So now I'm going to go to each of our guests, ask them if they've seen Indian Matchmaking. B, will they watch it so they can join us on Friday before our guests come on and give us their final thoughts. First, to Doug.
I have not seen the show yet. I will watch it. It looks like fun. And I'm also looking forward to seeing some of the shows that are currently in production. These are real shows that are in production right now. We're going to see 6 Feet Apart, Homebound, and Love in the Age of Corona.
Wait, these are real shows?
For TV.
These are real shows?
Those are real shows in production right now.
What do you think people will want to watch shows about Corona since we're living it?
Gotta laugh somehow.
That's true. All right, Doug, thank you very much as always. You're a great friend. And ever since we worked together at Columbia, where you changed Columbia Medical School communications, Columbia Medical Center communications, your impact is seen on this on their work every single day. Congratulations, and thank you so much, Doug. Good night.
Stay safe, everybody.
Good night. And now let's go to Briones Bedell, who is our guest, who is the one who's changed Trader Joe's with her work on the petition. She's a youth human rights activist, not a youth human rights activist. She happens to be a young person who's working on big things, and she spent her summer and spring, or at least her summer, changing Trader Joe's. So your final thoughts. And have you seen the show?
I haven't seen the show, but I've heard great things about it, and I will definitely watch it. Thank you so much for having me on the show. And I've been really personally excited about my opportunity to help affect positive social change. And I want to let anybody else out there who might be working on similar causes that to just put yourself out there and try it, even if there's contention, even if there's backlash. If you're solid in what your cause is and what you're doing, it's incredibly rewarding. And I'm incredibly grateful for the experience. And thank you again for having me.
Thank you. And here's Rajan says, thank you. Sree, Doug, Briones, Rose, and Vandana. Jonathan says, interesting program. Thank you. Rajan says, thank you. And Aparna says, ooh, for Tanya, who's coming up tomorrow. And then I love this. Daryl's shown up and says, what did I miss? Just got here. So I would like you, Brianna, to tell him exactly what just happened. I'm kidding. We're going to go right into replay. That's what we do here. I'm going to let you go. Have you had dinner yet?
No.
All right, so we'll let you go get dinner. Thank you very much, Brianna, and Briones, sorry. Good luck, and stay well and stay safe in your entire family.
Thank you.
All right, we'll see you. Bye-bye. And folks, that's it. That's our show for tonight. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you for your support. A big shout out to Rose Horowitz, our producer and guest booker extraordinaire. She saw the idea and was able to find and book her immediately, Briones, to come on our show. I learned a lot. I'm sure you did as well. Thank you for your support of this series. 132 episodes and still going strong. We're looking for speaker ideas, guest ideas, and sponsor ideas. And so, as always, we want to thank our sponsors. Our sponsors are Muckrack Academy, Fundamentals of Social Media, a free certification course now available, mrac.co/social, mrac.co/social. 4,000 people have taken this course. It's Netflix style. You can watch for just a few minutes or at a time, or finish it in 2 hours or 2 days, 2 years, 2 months. Take your time, mrac.co/social. Sign up right now. You know, because you have friends or family or others who would benefit from watching that. We also want to thank our friends at She's on Call. Please check out She's on Call. This is a new show that's executive produced by me and Dr. Sujana and Dr. Marina. They had a fantastic episode day before yesterday. Dr. Wendy Sinta was with us. She's an Obesity Medical Association former president. Dr. Tamara Fountain is the president of the biggest ophthalmological society. And Dr. Sujana is past president of her ENT specialty. And Dr. Marina Kurian is the New York president of the New York chapter of the American College of Surgeons. She's on Call, 11 a.m. Eastern. See the archives, fantastic episodes. I am not on camera, and so I'm just in awe of these women and what they're able to produce. That's it, folks. Thank you very much. Thank you for joining us. We'll see you tomorrow at 3 p.m. Eastern or on the archives, youtube.com/Sreenet. Please check us out. Please email me. Let's find ways to collaborate, work together, learn together. Our guest again, we always like to tell you who our guest is at the end one more time so that you can, if you're joining us, so you'll watch the replay. Trader Joe's is saying that it will change the names of Trader Jose's, Trader Ming's, Trader Arabian Joe's, Trader Giotto's, and Trader Josan. And I can't say anything else except thank you for watching. See you soon, everybody. Appreciate you very much. Bye-bye.